Welcome to Commercial Conversations Over Coffee, the show where two college dropouts turned real estate millionaires discuss all aspects of commercial real estate investing. Now, welcome your hosts, Tyler Cauble and apartment guy Bruce Peterson.
Happy Friday, you beautiful people, and also happy Friday to you too, Bruce. What's going on,
I
man?
knew
How
that
you
was
doing?
coming. You're so predictable. Dude, I'm doing great. Sitting in the office again now, not in a car. So hopefully we won't have lots of bandwidth issues like we did. Well, it wasn't our podcast, but a recent one we did together was kind of a train wreck. But,
Yeah.
things are really, really good.
No, it's okay. I mean, I held down the fort. You know, one of us has to be doing something, right?
Yeah,
That was an
you're the only
interview.
one that works in the world.
That's right. I'm the only one that does anything around here. That was an interview with our good buddy, Austin Linney. If y'all don't listen to his podcast, Construct Your Life, he's got to be one of the most active podcasters I've ever met. You know, last year he did like over 300 episodes.
Yep.
That is insane. That's insane. But yeah, so he had Bruce and I on there talking about, or Bruce and me rather, on the show talking about, I mean, really we were just all ribbing each other, giving each other a hard time and talking about doing deals. So that was a lot of fun. But yeah, go check out Austin's podcast. But Bruce, what have you been up to this week?
Dude, what have I not been up to? Like you, just chasing my tail all day, every day. We got the final numbers on our insurance claim for the big freeze in Austin. And, one of my properties, it's well over $1 million claim. We're still trying to put all that finishing touches together. We had to replace a regional manager. So we're wearing that hat for a little while we replace that person, which, lots of hiring, lots of staffing, just tons of stuff going on. And then on the other side, we've got the Tennessee stuff going on. I'm underwriting new deals here in Austin. Just lots going on, trying to finish up the seminar and, but like you said, we were talking about this earlier. I would have it no other way. It's either this way or, the shark, you die when you quit swimming. And I just got to keep swimming faster.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. I don't mind it one bit. I'd rather be busy than not busy. Makes everything go by better, go by faster. Oh, yeah. Well, talk to us about going through the hiring process. I mean, we don't need to get into details of all of that, but I mean, that's one thing that a lot of syndicators probably don't really think about is, well, I guess because you own a property management company as well. So that's something that you have to deal with that's different, but you're going through staffing issues and you're having to deal with hiring. So, how has that process been and what's it like? How much time is that taking?
Well, I believe there are two brains at work in the hiring process. My brain is more of a type A personality brain, not an engineer's brain. That a lot of people use DISC analysis and different, hiring personality profile assessments, things like that. Not necessarily to see if you're batshit crazy, but just to see if you are the personality type that we're looking for that specific position. So I don't do that. I am more of a people person. I just want to sit down and I want to get to know you. It's the task test. It's all the standardized testing in high schools and all that. I'm not saying DISC or any of that's bad. I've just never really looked into it because my personality, I just want to get to know you. My EQ is really high, and I want to know you as a human being, not just what you scored on my test. So the Wonderlic test for quarterbacks and the NFL draft, it has its place. But so basically what happens is when we have an opening, somebody at the corporate office, our HR department, will put together the standing ad for that position. Now, depending on what city it's in, what property it's for, we might have to fine tune it a little bit here or there. Maybe I need bilingual at this property, but not on that property. So we'll get that posted up on Indeed. We have one person that will go through the first read through of the submitted applications and resumes. And it's amazing how many people will reply and they're not qualified. We say you have to have this much experience, you have to have this kind of a certification, you have to have this or that. And just 90% of them don't have any of the qualifications. But so we have to weed through that. Then that person will set up phone interviews. Once they narrow down to about 3 to 5 candidates typically, then they will set up interviews with me and I'll do the face-to-face interviews. So we do have more of an analytical brain doing the first round. I will do the second round, and my round is, again, more I'm really good at asking you a question and letting you sweat. I want you to sweat. So now,
Yeah.
if you listen to this and you ever interview with me, no, my job in the interview is to make it go well and to make you uncomfortable, just the way it is, because I got to see how you're going to react to stress. Because your job's going to be stressful. Everybody's job at some point is going to become stressful. And I was coaching a regional manager through this one day a few years back, and this person was really bad about silence. He was bothered by silence, so he would ask a question, and before he could get the answer, he would automatically start talking again. Well, what I mean by that is, like, dude, look, stop.
Oh,
Ask
that's
them the
sales
question.
101.
Exactly.
I love that.
Ask
You
them
just
the
sit
question
there.
and just sit there. If I said, dude, if you have to sit there for 5 minutes, it's going to be awkward as shit. I don't care. Do not speak again until they speak. And when they start to sweat and you literally see beads of sweat on their forehead, you've achieved what you're trying to get to. Because again, we're not trying to be rude. We're not trying to be jerks. We're not trying to be intimidating and, I'm the boss. It's not that. I need to see you stress. I got to figure out who you are, how you're going to handle it, how you're going to cope with it. And then, I'll ask some of give me your pros and your strengths and weaknesses. I try to stay away from that shit. I just want to know who you are. I'm looking for your character. Give me something that you've done that nobody expected you to do, So I enjoy it, but it is a process, and we got to do background checks. We have to do reference checks, and I think a lot of people don't take the time to do reference checks because it's uncomfortable calling their current or former employer. Dude, if you don't, you're setting yourself up for some misery.
Seriously, I mean, if anybody's going to give them an unbiased review, it's going to be their former employer. I mean, you're going to know whether they were a terrible employee or not, right? Because if they left on good terms, then the employer will be like, well, we wish that they were still here, but they're great to work with, they're great to work with. Or
I tell everybody that I'm interviewing that, look, part of the process is I'm going to run your background. My background gets run by business partners. So I'm going to do the same thing with you. I'm going to run your background. What am I going to find? And just tell me it's okay, because I'm going to find it either way. I'm very honest with them and say, and then I follow it up with, okay, so now I'm going to do reference checks on you. Also, our HR department will do reference checks. What are they going to say? And, I just want to hear what they have to say. And every once in a while, you'll get the truth out of them. Well, it didn't end really well. And you're like, okay. But that's the thing. I just want to have a conversation with you like a cop that pulls you over. He's going to ask you the same question 14 different ways and see if he stumps you. Again, I'm not going to do it like that. It's not an aggressive thing. It's not an interrogation, but I just want to talk and hear what you have to say and kind of figure out who you are. Somebody pulled up yesterday to a property and for the interview, and they parked at the front door in a spot that clearly says for future resident parking only. Well, this person that's applying to be a property manager with me parks right there at the front door. Like that's a big red flag for me.
That's a huge red flag.
Yeah. It's like, are you really, it feels like I'm in this for me. Where can I park the closest? Not thinking about the business. So that felt very selfish to me and self-centered. Now, but I still had the interview, and the interview actually went extremely well. But guys, that's all those small things. Think about everything. Your car better be clean when you show up for an interview, because if I have a chance to walk down there and see your car, I'm going to look inside your car. If it's a shithole, if there's McDonald's wrappers in the back seat, 10 feet tall, I ain't hiring you, dude. I'm just not going to do it. You have no control of your own life. How are you going to run my business?
Yeah, that's a great point. Man, hiring is one of those things that nobody really talks to you about when you become a business owner. But honestly, it's one of the most difficult things that you will do, because it's really tough to get it right. And if you get it wrong, it can be detrimental to your business and your revenue and your reputation. I mean, if you get it right, and we've had a string of incredible hires here lately, I think because we've started getting really intentional about what we're looking for. I mean, I've hired 5 people in the last 5 months, and they're all A players. And so it's so fun to be able to surround yourself with that. But we had to get really intentional about doing that. It became like I used to lean on my network for hires, right? Because you think, oh, well, if so and so gives them as a reference or whatever, like I trust that person, I could trust this person. But I've found that that's not always the most reliable way to go about finding people, and so we use the Strengths Finder. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but it's a pretty incredible test. It shows you. You take that test and you're like, wow, that is exactly who I am. So my one thing that I've been working on here lately is bringing on a COO to help me with my companies, because who has a team builder, team running mentality. Because one of the 34 strengths is your developer, which means like how good are you at developing people? And mine is like it's number 34. Right? Like it's the lowest on the list because my personality is built to just go get deals. And then I train people by abdication. It's like, okay, cool, here's this, go do it. And then I would go do my own thing. And that's not the best way to train people.
But, I hope people hear that. And what they should take from what you said is not this formula or this program that you're using. Pardon me. It should be that you're real. Look, you're a human being. Lots of people can't admit that they suck in something. You know your strengths and you go all in, and you know what you're not good at. I'm the same way. I have no problem being completely upfront with everybody that I deal with. Look, I'll tell people, I know how to oversee your job. I've never done your job, right? I know how to know if you're doing it appropriately, effectively, efficiently, that thing. And I can watch budgets and P&Ls, walk properties to make sure everything's going well. I know how to keep tabs on the position, but I've never done your job. I'm not the best salesperson in the world. Tyler, you're great at that. I'm more, I have a different strength than that. And that's what you're great at. So we work on the back office. We put the people in place that we need. You go out there and grow the company, and we keep it, plugging along on the right track. So I love that people heard, hopefully, that you said that, look, I owned up that it was a 34 for me. Some people would go, I can't tell anybody about that. Why not? If they know you, they know that about you. Just own it, dude. Be real.
Andy just jumped into the live chat with a surprised emoji. So Andy's my asset manager. I hired him, I guess, back in December or November. But yeah, he's one of those 5 hires. I mean, it helps me so well because, I know my strength, right? It's like, if you are the quickest and fastest wide receiver, why would you want to focus on getting bigger so you can hit people harder? Like, there's no point, right? Like, focus on becoming even faster, because then you'll be so fast that nobody will ever be able to catch you. You'll never have to hit anybody. It's like, why would you lean into your weaknesses and focus on making those better when you're already way ahead on this side? And so, that's kind of how I am when it comes to putting these deals together. It's funny, on that live stream that we did with Austin Linney the other day, after you dropped out, Steph, who's Bruce's wife, by the way, Steph was watching the live stream. And of course, I'm going on this tangent like, yeah, we just closed an $18 million deal. I can't wait to get started and go find a $100 million deal. And like, that's going to be the next big thing that I want to do. And Steph like calls me after the live stream. She was like almost in tears. She was like, please slow down. Please slow down. Like, joking, obviously, because, I go out, like, my job is to go out and kill the lion. And then Bruce and Steph helped me figure out what to do with it after that. And she was like, we just killed a really big lion. Okay. Can we take a deep breath?
Well, but, honestly, though, your personality needs people like us to go, okay.
Yeah.
Because every once in a while, you do a good job of this most of the time. You have to listen to these people in your world when you are your personality to say, okay, you're about to outstrip the company's bandwidth right now. Let us hire up, and then we can go forward again. Because a person with your personality, it's very easy and it's very common that you outstrip, you outrun the entire organization, and it all falls apart and you go bankrupt because they aren't able to pick up the pieces fast enough and hire people fast enough and build the infrastructure around all the things that you're doing.
Exactly.
We've been working on that. You're getting better, but every once in a while, guys, we push back on Tyler. Tyler pushes back on us. It's a symbiotic relationship, but we got to let him know sometimes. And if you are us in your company and you have a Tyler, Tyler makes the whole thing run, right? But sometimes you have to be man enough or have a backbone and say, look, give me a second. Let me catch up, and then we'll run again. So we need to do it in spurts. If we just run ball to the wall all day, every day, we will eventually fall over because we can't keep up.
Yeah, I mean, look, real estate is a team sport. The guys that come out and do it on their own, they either never scale, which is fine. You don't have to. You don't have to scale in this business to be incredibly successful. But they either come out and they never scale, or they end up burning out because there's way, way, way too much to do. I mean, I've got 9 employees now, right? Which is honestly crazy to think about. But that's how much help I need just doing all the stuff that we're doing, and they're all firing on all cylinders. And this is a team sport. You can have the best quarterback ever, but if you don't have a good offensive line, it doesn't matter. Like, it will not matter because you're not protecting everything else that you're already getting. And so, that's incredibly important. I mean, every deal that I've done, I've never done one by myself. I've always had at least 1 or 2 other partners in, if not more than that. And it's a smart thing to do because, one, you're diversifying your risk, right? Like, I'm not the only one signing on this banknote, right? We'll have other people that do it too. But 2, you get other eyes on the project, right? Bruce is going to look at a project completely differently than I will because he comes from a very different background. I come from the commercial real estate brokerage side. Bruce comes from the multifamily side. So when he looks at a deal, it's totally different from what I do. And while he may not necessarily know the specifics about retail, he knows how to syndicate a deal and put projects together, and it's incredibly valuable. So I do highly recommend, as you're getting further into real estate, to find great partnerships, to find and build those people that can do this with you, because I mean, hell, it's a lot more fun to do it with friends than it is to do it on your own.
Oh, it is. And a lot of people resist that because they are, concerned about giving away a piece of the pie. Well, I can handle all these jobs. I can wear all these hats. Why am I going to give somebody 10, 20, 30% equity in my company? To Tyler's point, you're going to outstrip your bandwidth and you won't be able to go any further. And as you start to come up against that limiting level, that governor, if you will, you're going to just stress yourself out, and you're going to implode because you're wearing every hat and you're stressing yourself out. Bring people in, give them a slice of the business, because if I give somebody, say, 50% of the business, if that person can help me grow my business 4x, well, I'm still making twice what I was before I brought this guy on. Right? Or this woman on. So yeah, bring people in. It took me a little while to get there. On the employee level, I've always understood that. On the business side, it took me a few years to understand that, look, just because I can do all the jobs myself doesn't mean I should, because then that's going to cap my growth. So like you, we're looking for a COO for our management company in Austin. We have one together in Tennessee, you and I, but mine here in Austin, we're looking for a COO. Someone that we can bring in, give them a fairly sizable chunk of our company, but to take over the day-to-day operations, because there are so many other things that we have rolling. We have a nonprofit we want to get started. We have the education we're working on. We're running the asset management company, the construction company. If I could find a COO to take over the day-to-day operations and the management company, which honestly, that takes up almost 80% of our complete bandwidth, that management company. Yeah. I love having it. I wouldn't change it. But if I can find somebody super, super high caliber that is experienced in this industry, then by God, I'm going to bring that person on and give them a big piece of our company.
Absolutely. I mean, look, the way that I look at it is I would rather own 10% of 10 pieces of real estate than 100% of one. And it's the same thing. It doesn't matter if it's real estate or if it's a business or whatever you're doing. You get diversity. And there's multiple streams of income instead of one, right? I mean, everybody talks about, you got to have, what is it? The average millionaire has 5+ streams of income. I mean, you go out and you get 10% of 10 properties, you're on your way, because that's 10 chances for one of those to take off instead of one. So.
Exactly. So yeah, the average billionaire, I think it is, or millionaire, they have 7 streams of income. Right now we have over 20, which we're probably a little too much, right? We've got irons and fires.
That's why
everywhere.
you need a COO.
That's exactly where I was going with that. But that's why, because I don't want to stop buying or investing or starting companies. Because first of all, I love it. And it is, I have big dreams. I have big aspirations. I want to help a lot of people with our nonprofit. I want to do a lot of things, and it takes a lot of money to do the things that we want to do. So I want to continue to start companies. So we just got to keep plugging along, trudging through it, and again, bring in strong people to the table with us. I can start it and then bring somebody else in once we have the concept proven that can take over operations.
It's funny. We never really plan out what we're going to be talking about when the show first starts. We know what we're going to be talking about for the whole show, right? But we never really talk about what we're going to be talking about in the beginning. And that actually lends itself really well to what we are going to be discussing today is the teamwork aspect of it. Syndication is a team taking down an investment together and working together to pull off something that, maybe one or two of them could do it on their own, but it's a lot easier when you've got, a couple of GPs and a whole, litany of LPs that are all taking it down together, because then one person isn't out all of the cash and one person isn't having to do all the work. You get to kind of spread everything out. So Bruce actually taught me about syndication really a few years ago when I met him in Austin at the Acton School of Business. And I was immediately hooked. I grew up in a very different style of commercial real estate where the developers that I worked for self-funded every deal, which is fine, right? Like, it's incredible that they were in a position to do that. But I didn't know that you could just go out and put capital together like you could in a syndication, right? I always thought it was like either you spend years making money and saving up until you can do your own projects, or you go like the private equity route. I thought it was these two extremes. And there's nothing wrong with either. There are some deals where, eventually I probably will do some stuff that's close to being on my own. I'll still probably likely have a partner or two just because it's very valuable to me to be able to bring in somebody like Bruce to help me do things, right? Again, focusing on our strengths. You've got that end, and then you've got private equity, which is like now you basically have a job, right? You're working for a firm that is putting up, almost all of the cash, if not all the cash. And they're really going to be calling the shots. You're going to have some latitude, but for the most part, you got a job. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but again, it just depends on what you're wanting to do. Syndication, in my opinion, is a great middle ground. Yeah, technically you have a job, right? Because you're working for your investors, but also they're investing with you and your vision. They're along for the ride with what you're doing. And so that was what was so cool to me about syndication. Is that you can go out and raise capital from investors, pitch them on your dream, your vision, and take it from there. So it was a few years ago that Bruce first taught me about it, and I ended up doing my first syndication in June of 2019, which is actually the second property that I ever bought. I have done a case study on the first property I ever bought. If you want to go over to my YouTube channel, it's just under Tyler Cauble. I think it's actually labeled case study. It was the first building I bought. But that one was with two investors, right? I didn't syndicate that. So I wanted to dive into this office syndication that we did. It was 12,000 square feet in South Nashville, and kind of walk you guys through it. And Bruce is relatively familiar with the project because, of course, I consulted with him on it before I got into it. And Parasol manages it. We still do, even though I've sold it since. And I figured it'd be appropriate for us to talk about that because he'll ask a bunch of questions that you guys would probably want to ask too. So let's dive on in, and I'm going to show you guys what the project was. So Travis Drive, this is actually the marketing page that we have, the for lease page, because the Cauble group is actually still leasing it up. It's like 95% occupied right now, but. So Cauble Group leases it. Parasol manages it. It's a 12,000 square foot office building, 2 stories. We'll scroll through this. I'll just kind of show you guys the marketing page. And then I'm going to dive into the befores because I have a whole bunch of pictures that we took before we got in here and did anything. There you can see the property has a pretty good sized parking lot. This was actually before the island was finished. That parking lot just kind of spilled out into the street. There was almost no separation between the parking lot and the street, which I just felt was kind of weird. So we got rid of a couple of, looks like 3 parking spaces maybe. and created this island it's beautiful. I mean, it's river rock with some low maintenance shrubbery in it, which is very, easy to maintain. This is in South Nashville. Let me pull up the map. You guys can actually take a look at it. So it's in South Nashville, right there. So you can see there's actually a major thoroughfare going east-west. That's Harding. And then it's in north-south is Nolensville Road. So those are two major thoroughfares, not far from the international airport and not even 10 minutes from downtown Nashville. So good area. There's a very dense immigrant population there, which is incredibly entrepreneurial. And my thought was when I first started looking at this property was, you know what, there's not enough nice office space in this area for these small business owners. Either they're going out and, leasing this old space, or there's nothing else to really do. So I really started looking into the rates and what things were leasing for in the area, because the building was on the market. A guy that I actually went to high school with, he was 5 or 6 years older than me, had it listed for sale. It was this old medical building. Let me see if I can pull up the old pictures and show you guys. So this is actually what it looked like before, which is night and day different, right? It's that older, like you could tell.
It didn't look 60s. Bad, but nothing like what you did to it.
Doesn't look bad at all. I mean, it was actually well cared for. If you're listening on the podcast, it's kind of that mixed brick from the 60s and 60s or 70s. It's kind of like it's got red, pink, like dark brown brick. It's not the best looking anymore. But it was the Carroll Professional Building. There's a hospital actually right around the corner. And so it was a medical company that owned the building. They actually occupied the entire top floor, and I think a part of the ground floor. And so when I was looking at this, this area it's not a high density office area where you would expect somebody to come in and just sign a 5,000 square foot lease, right? And I didn't want to be that guy that was trying to lease 5,000, 6,000 square feet at a time. Well, fortunately, these ground floor suites, there's 5 of them. They're all about a little over 1,000 square feet each, and they're all private. They have ground floor entrances. So that actually lends itself really well to kind of a medium-sized small business, right? You got 5 to 8 employees. You could have signage over your little door. And then upstairs was basically, let's go through some of these photos.
Yeah, this is where you could see the big change. It was really dated inside.
Oh, it was so dated. Let me see if I can find a
Look at the green carpet.
I mean, green, like it looked like somebody renovated it in 1989 and then locked the doors and left.
Yep.
So this is the hallway. Look at that that carpet, it looks bad just because of the style, but it was actually in pristine condition. I'm telling you, it was like somebody renovated it in 89 and just walked away. Green wallpaper wainscoting that's like that wood pattern, green wallpaper. It's like, man, I can't believe that was ever in style. But this was one giant office space, the whole 6,000 square feet. And I knew that I was not going to be able to lease a 6,000 square foot office up there. So when I was going through and looking at all the different suites, they actually kind of laid themselves out really well. Let me see if let me pull up the floor plan. So this is a 3D tour that I shot. And there's actually suites that you can tell obviously were not shot during this. So we were standing right here. This is that glass storefront that we were looking at. Let's see. Oh. Let's see. Where is that? Right here. So this glass storefront is right here, just so you have a frame of reference. So this lended itself well to being one, 2 office suite. This was 1 2 office suite. There's a single office suite right here. This is a 2 office suite. There's a couple more right here that we haven't shot yet. And then there's a whole bunch here that we haven't shot yet because they were all occupied at the time that I was taking this 3D tour. But you can tell, and this is a little kitchen. You've got a restroom right here and a restroom right here. So a restroom on either end with a little kitchen. And I thought, wow, what if we just came in here and actually turned these into private office spaces and leased them out? So I was looking at the rental rates in the area, and it was $23.50 a foot, which I thought was, that's actually relatively affordable, right? I mean, that's very affordable for Nashville. And I started running the numbers and was like, man, I think that we can actually fully renovate this building because I got a really good deal. I mean, I think I bought it for $81 a square foot. So I started looking at it. I was like, I think that we can renovate this for about $20 a square foot. So we're all in at $101 a square foot. And I think that we can lease this easily for $23.50 a foot full service. Now, that means that we would be covering all of the expenses on the property. So, we needed to make sure that those costs were under control. So part of what we did was, install LED lighting and, secured controlled access and that kind of stuff. But, when you start this suite right here is our biggest suite. I mean, it's probably 700 or 800 square feet. And I want to say that the rent for that was like $1,800 a month, which is really affordable. You start getting into these suites we've got some that are 200 square feet. So let's run the math on that. 200 square feet times $23.50 a foot divided by 12, $392 a month for that office space.
So real quick, that's very important when people are watching this and their brains are fixed on multifamily, because we face this when we do webinars for some of our projects. They're like, wait a minute. $23.50 a square foot, that's, 500 square feet. That means they're paying $11,750 a month for it. In multifamily, it's based on a monthly rate.
That's right.
In commercial, it's always based on an annual. Then you divide that by 12 to figure out what your monthly is. So just understand that, guys. So that $23.50 is per square foot per year. And then to figure out what your monthly payment is, you divide by 12.
That is absolutely right. Thank you for that. So yeah, let's give you guys a little more entertaining angle on this space here. But yeah, so, $392 a month for a private office that includes utilities, that includes Wi-Fi. You can come in here and open up and get to business without having to go through a whole lot. You move a desk in and you put your sign on the door and that's it. And so it was this was actually my first project in micro units. I figured, maybe we could lease these out a lot faster if they were a lot smaller and more affordable on a monthly basis. So that's what we ended up doing. We broke this up into, I want to say we ended up having 11. Yeah, we have 11 offices up here. And we ended up leasing it in under 16 months. The building was fully vacant. It had one tenant in one of the suites downstairs. So it had 1,000 square feet. So, whatever that is, 87% vacant. And we leased it. I'd sold my investors on a 3-year timeline for this one because I thought it's going to take us 3 years to get in there and really do all the work that's going to take. It's going to take us, a long time to get in there and renovate it. It's going to take us, I wanted enough time to stabilize the property in case I was wrong about my assumptions. So we assumed it was going to take 24 to 30 months for the lease up. And as soon as the building was done, we started signing leases left and right. When COVID hit, we actually signed 5 leases within 4 months of COVID. So from March until, I guess, September, give or take, we signed a whole bunch of leases because they're smaller spaces. People wanted to get out of their house. They were affordable, and there was no barrier of entry, right? It was like you sign the lease, you put a desk in there, and you can turn your computer on, connect to the Wi-Fi, and you're good to go. So
the only barrier for entry, I would think, is you're going to vet them, obviously, right? So what is your vetting process?
Yeah, so through Parasol, we actually have we use a property management software called Buildium, and Buildium allows us to do we send out an application and a background credit check. And for this property, since it's so small, we're signing flexible leases, right? That's another thing. Most traditional office spaces have 3 to 5 year lease terms. Here we're doing as little as 1 year. Typically they're 1 to 3 year leases. And so when it's that small, we don't typically run extensive credit or financial checks. On some of the bigger things, we'll do 2-3 years of tax returns. We'll do a personal financial statement. I want to see profit and loss statements and balance sheets for the companies. But again, we're talking about $400 a month. So they come in, as long as they pass the credit and background check, and they can put up the first month's rent and security deposit, then we're good to go. Which is great, right? I mean, again, it's just lowering that barrier of entry. I feel like so much in commercial real estate is just these created barriers of entry to make things a lot more difficult, which, for the bigger things makes sense, right? Because you don't want to waste your time with groups that aren't going to go anywhere. But for something like this, you just can't do that. So, yeah, I mean, that was kind of it. So obviously you could tell this is what the suite looked like. I mean, we're going through different suites here. All of these photos, I mean, just the carpet was all yellowed. The walls were, and these are like good photos, right? I mean, these photos make the make the building look a lot better than it really was. Not that it was in bad shape. That was the one tenant that we had was an insurance agency. There's an entrance on this side and then a mirrored entrance on the other side. I bought the building for, you guys might want to know that part. Bought the building for, I think it was $950. Gosh, I can't even remember. Let's do the math. $81 a foot times 12,070 square feet. Okay, 977, 670. So it's right around there. So probably 975 or 980. It was 980. It was 90. I paid $980,000 for it. We ended up taking out a loan for about $230,000 for construction. And really, we didn't need to there was no structural issues. The HVAC was in good condition. The roof was in good condition. So this was a very good first syndication because it wasn't this massive undertaking for me. Now, I've got experience in doing all of that, right? I mean, I grew up doing construction with my grandfather, so I know how that process works, but I also didn't want to have some super heavy lift getting into this. I mean, this was value add already. So you guys can see kind of how, I mean, look at that carpet. Oh yeah, baby.
Hey, let's talk real quick about, the numbers you just talked about. So you said you paid $980 for it and you took out a $230,000 construction loan. So the original purchase for $980, was that all cash?
It was not all cash. No, so we actually did what's called an A&D loan, which is acquisition and development. It doesn't necessarily mean it's development, but it's construction, essentially. So in commercial, which is different from multifamily, we can bundle all of our expenses together and get a loan on that price, right? So total cost was, let's just call it, $1.3 million for round numbers. We needed to bring 20 to 25% of that total cost to the table.
So on $1.3 million, 25%. So you roughly had to come out of pocket $325,000 to do this.
Yeah, it was a little bit more than that. So maybe we had to bring 25. I think we brought 25% plus 5% in reserves, because I know it was right around 400.
390. Okay,
yeah.
Let's call it 400. This is important as you get to the back end numbers. That's why I'm trying to make sure we all understand.
Yep, absolutely. So, relatively small project, right? I mean, we didn't have to raise a whole lot. I think we had 6 investors in this one. So, I think you guys kind of get the point. This is actually after, it's just kind of old and worn down, right? Let me show you guys this video that we ended up doing after we painted the exterior of the building.
Yeah, that feels Germantown-esque. That is beautiful. It's the same damn building. It just has a fresh, modern coat of paint.
Yep. It's amazing what just a coat of paint will do. We also restriped the parking lot, which made it just a lot better.
Well, it looks clean, it looks fresh, it looks new now. I love doing parking lots. They don't usually last very long as far as that blacktop is concerned, but man, for that first 3 to 6 months, oh my God, it looks amazing.
Oh yeah. It makes such a big difference. So here's these are technically in progress photos because, like I said, you can't see that the island is done. But that's one thing that we always do for all of our properties. And it's because, I'm also a property manager and I have a commercial real estate brokerage, but we make sure that we have top quality marketing. I mean, if you have incredible marketing, the project will sell itself. So downtown is actually that way. People. So that was the one thing about this project that I really wanted to blow out of the water was like my competition was office space from the 1980s that hadn't been renovated since. And so they were leasing it for $23.50 a foot because it was cheap. And so I wanted to bring something to market that was the best thing on the market for the exact same price. And that's what we were able to do because I got it at such a good price per square foot and I maintained my renovation expenses. I mean, think about it, $101 a square foot all in after renovations. If I was going to go back and build this, I would have to buy the dirt, which is a totally different cost. And then it would probably cost me $150 to $180 a foot to build this building back. So you think about that. So $150 to $180 a foot plus the cost of the dirt. I would have to ask much, much higher rents. But instead, because I found this completely vacant property and got in there and only had to do mostly cosmetic renovations, we kept our prices so low that I could get an incredible return at asking at market rates for like old school stuff. So if you're a tenant and you're in the market and you're looking to lease office space and you have a choice between option A, which hasn't been renovated since the 80s, it's the exact same size, and you get, the same amount of amenities, or option B, which is brand new, looks amazing, gives your business a much better presence, it's a no-brainer. And that's why we ended up leasing it up so fast.
And see, that's why, getting completely vacant, they're harder to get lending on, right? But if you can get something completely vacant, you have a cost advantage over other people almost always. If you pay the right price, that is. You got to pay the proper price when you buy vacant. Don't pay the price that it would be worth once you turn it around, which is what everybody wants to sell it for. Don't pay that price. But if you pay the proper price, then that's how you get these deals to work out for less than build cost.
That's exactly right. So that's a Walmart right there. So it's a good location. Like there's a lot of traffic. You can see this is a 5-lane road. We're right off of a 5-lane road. But yeah, it's all about getting out there and finding it. So we went with a local lender. I guess it was technically a community bank. That's the hospital right there. So you can see how close we are to the hospital. I love buying stuff near hospitals because those are typically great areas. I mean, if you don't have medical tenants interested, there are ancillary businesses that want to be near hospitals that, sell orthopedic braces or whatever. I mean, there's a ton of that. But yeah, we went with a local lender who ended up getting us, it was a pretty decent loan. Like I said, it was 20 or 25% down. And the interest rate, looking back now, this was June of 2019, interest rate was 5.25%. And we were like, hell yeah, we got a deal. Which is crazy because when I sold this building back in October, same bank gave them, the same bank ended up doing the loan for the new buyer. I think that they were in the mid 3s, which you just think about like how crazy that is in not even 2 years, in a year, because we sold it in 16 months. So in a year and a half, we went from thinking 5.25% interest rate was incredible to like 3.5%. Which makes a huge difference, right? And it was incredible to see.
Right. So on that real quick, people always come up and say, okay, well, I didn't get involved when interest rates were 3.5. Interest rates are now 8 or 10 or wherever they may end up someday. Go, oh, well, I can't buy now. Why not? It's got a higher interest rate. Well, you just factor that into your numbers. People have been buying rental real estate for decades, if not centuries. Interest rates were 15% at one point. Well, there were still deals being made. It just means you can't offer as much for the property. So there's levers that you have to pull. You got to be sure you know what you're doing. But in every single interest rate environment, there are deals that work. They just don't sell for as much as they used to when interest rates were low. So don't get into that trap. People always want to talk themselves out of everything. Well, it's too hot right now. Or, interest rates have gotten too high now. Cap rates are too low. No, there's always somehow to make a deal work. Now, you have to find a seller that's understanding of where the market is, But guys, don't talk yourselves out of shit without even trying. And it happens all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, I think under the Reagan era, interest rates got as high as like 18%.
Yep.
I mean, that's crazy. 18%. You're almost paying 1/5 of your property every year in interest.
Yeah.
That's so wild. But it didn't, people were still buying. I mean, it's still a good real estate market. So yeah, it all depends. I mean, there's so many factors that go into it. I mean, honestly, it decreases the value of the real estate because, I've got to get a return on my work. As far as the capital raise goes on this project, so this was the largest capital raise I had done to date, right? So it was 400,000, give or take. And, the most I'd raised up to that point was 100 grand for my first project. I was a board member, actually. I still am a board member for the Real Estate Investors of Nashville. And I run a meetup, which I highly encourage you to do. Either join a meetup or volunteer at a meetup or start your own meetup, because it's a great way to meet people and also build credibility, right? So, twice a month, these, I typically had 30 to 50 people show up to my meetup. So twice a month, 30 to 50 people would come and see me as the expert on commercial real estate, interviewing people on what they do in commercial real estate, whether it was an engineer or an attorney or a CPA, whatever it was, right? And I never asked them for anything. They just saw the projects that we were doing, the stuff that we were working on. And so when I started going through this process, we put together an offering memorandum showing what the investment was, how much we were needing to raise, what the expected returns would be, et cetera, and presented it. Not like I didn't take up an entire class on that by any means, but I just said, hey, by the way, here's some information if you guys are interested. We're going through a capital raise for this project. And all of my investors ended up coming through that channel. Every single one of them, all 6. I had a partner on the deal who he didn't come through it, but he was a partner with me in the GP. That he was the one that helped me put everything together. But everyone, all the investors, all of the LP came from the Real Estate Investors in Nashville. And so I'm not saying like go to your local real estate meetup and just start asking for money. That's the worst way that you could possibly go about doing that, because 1, you'll be asked never to come back. And 2, no one would ever invest with that guy. The best thing to do is to get in and give value and be genuine about that. I mean, I never asked anybody for anything. I was so giving of my time. I still am. I mean, obviously, we're doing this podcast. We do a whole bunch of YouTube videos. I try to teach people how to do this so they can go do it on their own. And I think that that's what they found so valuable and interesting and why they decided to invest with us. So that's how I ended up putting the raise together. Got 400 grand from about 6 people, and we were off to the races. So 400
grand, you bought it for 1.3. How did that sale work out for you?
Yeah, so we ended up selling it for. I had a buddy of mine that actually had a 1031 exchange, and he reached out and asked me if I had anything. I said, well, we don't have anything on the market, but I just stabilized this building. What are your thoughts? And so we kind of went through it, and he was like, yeah, I'll give you $1,650,000 for it. So we ended up selling for $1,650,000. Which was less than what we had in our offering memorandum as what we were going to sell. But also keep in mind, this was 16 months into it. This was not 36 months. So we finished the investment 20 months ahead of time. We sold it for a couple $100,000 less than what we were expecting. But also time value of money, the returns were insane. So
the IRR skyrocketed because you executed on a lower exit, a lower sales price, but you did it in less than half of the time. So the IRR takes into consideration the time value of money. How long did you hold it to get that big chunk at the end? Yeah, you destroyed your returns by accepting a lower amount. See, that's huge. So, let's look at that. $1.65 million sale. You bought it for 1.3. Right? So you made a profit of $350,000. Now, these are going to be really rough numbers. There are transactional fees, commissions, all that, but we're not going to go into that right now. But just on the surface, right? So you made $350,000 in profit, right? So That's huge. You know,
Yeah.
you did really, really well on that deal. And you did it, and you said 20 months?
Yeah, 16 months.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, it was a great deal. And the other thing too is we sold this on October 1st, 2020. Right?
Right.
Everybody was freaking out about office space. They thought the world was going to end, and here we are. We stabilized this 12,000 square foot, 100% office building, and sell it at a very attractive cap rate for us and for the buyer, really, because his interest rates were so low. And we made a great profit and moved on. I mean, my investors were over the moon because when the pandemic first hit, of course, you're starting to feel those calls like, what's going to happen? And we braced ourselves, right? Because, you know,
So
it's
what was
office.
what was your loan balance again?
I want to say it's like 800,000 or 900,000 maybe.
Okay, so let's go high end, $900,000. So you paid off your loan from that $1.65 million check. You have $750,000. Remember, you only put in $400,000, so you almost doubled your investors' money in less than 2 years. That's the magic of leverage. That's huge. Had you not had leverage, you still would have been okay. You still would have done well, but because you did have leverage, now again, you're probably going to lose, 5 to 10% in transactional fees, but still, let's do that. 1.65 million sales price. If you only netted 90% of that, that's 1.485 million. Take out your $900,000 loan. You have $585,000. You put $400,000 into it, so you made almost $200,000 or 50% profit in less than 2 years. The numbers were better than that because you didn't lose 10% in the sale. But again, it's just to, kind of drive home what a great deal this was for you guys and why selling it so quickly at a lower price was really important.
Yeah, it was an excellent first deal, right? Because and that was the thing. Is like let's sell it because we can add it to the track record and it'll help me raise capital for the next project that I want to do. I'm a buy and hold kind of investor. I really want to keep everything. This project was on the opposite side of town from where I typically work. And what I found was, to me, this is very much a lifestyle business. And look, it's only 12 or 15 minutes away from my office, but I just didn't want to make that drive. I really didn't want to. And my heart just wasn't in it anymore. And so it was a great move for us to make. So I got to get rid of the one project that was not on the side of town that all of my other projects are in, and got an excellent return for my investors that I could add to our track record. And so, since then, obviously this project is small compared to what we're doing now. A couple of weeks ago, I closed on a 330,000 square foot shopping center in Madison. So it is amazing how this can snowball if you're doing the right things by your investors. I could have very selfishly said, no, I want to keep making the property management fees and I want to keep making the brokerage fees and keep this deal for another 2 years, but that doesn't make sense for everybody involved. And you have a fiduciary responsibility to your investors. So
right.
Yeah,
and,
that's
a lot of people listening will probably think, oh, you're a rich guy. You don't understand. You're disconnected. There are a lot of people listening to this probably that could have done this deal on their own, honestly. Many of you couldn't have. That's fine. That's why syndications are in place. But think about that. If you were to just go out and put the $400,000 down yourself, all that profit would have been yours. You wouldn't have had the headache of investors. I like doing syndications, but let's just be honest. You have, even if they're great investors, they're great limited partners, there's still a degree of headache because you got to get out updates on a regular basis. You got to cut distribution checks on a quarterly basis usually. So there's lots of work that goes into it. But again, somebody could have gone out and done this on their own. Now find somebody experienced like Tyler to kind of take you by the hand as a real estate broker, because he could have helped you with some of this. Now he wasn't going to do it for you if he was just your broker, but he could have helped you kind of, talk through the business plan together. So get smart people around you, get great professionals around you. You could have gone off and done this yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And look, at the time, I didn't have the money to do that. I was 26 years old. This is my first project. I didn't have any money. I was, had just started my first company and was trying to get that really up and going. Oh, I guess I had Parasol at the time, but Parasol isn't nearly what it is now. And, I mean, the only money that I had to put into this deal was the brokerage commission that I made as the brokering the deal. So, of course I got the split as a GP, and I rolled in the 25 or 30 grand that I got from buying the project. So, I mean, I didn't have the money to do this. That's why syndication is so great. It gave me the opportunity to come in and look at what we were able to pull off. So
Exactly. So talk to me about another thing too. You talked about the flexible lease structure. So does that help? I don't know the answer to this. I'm not trying to set you up. I'm genuinely curious because this is a different world than multifamily. Flexible lease structures when you go to sell. How does the seller, how does the buyer look at that? Or how does the lender for the prospective buyer look at flexible lease structure?
So it's very important that you address that on the front end. And there is a story to tell there. And I've actually, I've used this as a case study with lenders and investors since, because, whenever you're going into a project on a refinance, lenders want to see longer lease terms, right? Because that means that it is a more secure income stream, which means that there's a high chance that you'll make money, which means there's a high chance that they'll get paid back. On a development, they'll typically want to see some pre-leases, 20 to 30% for the commercial space. And which is aggressive, right? I mean, so the story that I told, and everybody once you talk about it is on board, but it's still a different process, and they've got to wrap their minds around it. These are micro office units, right? These are tenants that want to come in, look at the space, sign a lease that day, and move in the next day. So I can't go out and pre-lease this stuff 6 months in advance and then start renovations and then deliver the space to them. It would just never work. The project would never get off the ground because those tenants are going to go elsewhere. And it's the same when I was selling it to the new buyers. And luckily, the lender that ended up financing it was already involved in the project. Right? So imagine how happy he was. We weren't even out of our interest-only period when we paid back that loan. I mean, he looks like a rock star at his bank because he, put his neck out on the line to get us this great loan. And then in 16 months, we turn around and pay it off and bring him a client that's going to get a new loan. So they were familiar with the project. And I did have that conversation with them of like, look, it's been 16 months. These spaces are smaller. They sign 1-year leases. These guys are not going to sign 3 to 5 year leases. They may stay here for 10 years, but they're going to sign year-to-year leases. And look at the leasing velocity. Look at how many leases we've signed in the middle of COVID. Look at how many leases we've signed in the last 16 months. Look at our rent collection rates. And once you start looking into all that, you get to understand like, okay, this project will never trade for a 5 cap. It just won't. I mean, it's smaller. They're all local credit tenants, and they're turning over year to year. But will it sell for a 6.5 or a 7 cap? Absolutely. Absolutely it will. Because this is a type of product that, again, is very high in demand. It beats everything else that's in the area at the same price point. And so when you have that, it's tough to argue against. So yeah, it was definitely a different, delicate balance that we had to take with lenders and the buyers. But once you kind of help everybody understand what they're looking at, it's very easy to wrap their minds around.
Oh, cool. All right, cool. So, and that's kind of the approach that we're taking at that we're talking about right now with our Dickerson project, which is the provisionary. That with the restaurant spaces, the micro retail and office, signing shorter term leases that first time around, it gets us in the door quicker with a tenant. But as we're trying to prove out this kind of newer concept to a lot of people, it gets them in. And then we do prove the concept. Now I can look to bump their rents a little more aggressively at the end of that 1-year term. When you lock somebody in for 5, 10, 20 years, so for some of the large anchor tenants, you'll have escalations built into that lease that every year it'll increase 2% or 3%, or maybe it's inflation, CPI, whatever it is. But when you can retire that lease and sign a brand new lease, you might be able to bump them 10, 20, 30%, depending on what the local market is. So it gives you a lot of flexibility. Yes, you're taking a little bit of a risk now. You sign a 1-year lease for everybody, and then nobody wants to stay. Oh, now what am I going to do? So it's not perfect. It's not the perfect solution for everybody. It does come with risk, but it can work fantastically well.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I like about the rent bumps is that, we typically underwrite somewhere between 2 and 3% annual increases, which seems to be market, right? On a project like this, if you're paying $400 a month and then next year your rent goes to $440 a month, it's not a big difference for you. But it's a 10% increase in rent, which is huge for us. So, that's how that kind of stuff starts to add up. You can turn over the leases faster. If you don't like a certain tenant or a type of business, you can just not renew after 1 year. There's actually a lot of pros to doing shorter leases. Now, they have their cons, right? I mean, you got to deal with them. But once you figure out how to navigate it, it's really not that big of a deal. I mean, I feel like a lot of developers and investors blow out of the water or blow out of proportion how much work really goes into maintaining these smaller units, and I don't see it. It's really easy. I mean, we knocked this one out of the park.
Well, see, that's another key point, right? So the shorter term leases do create some more work because you got to renew leases more often, but also, you have smaller spaces, so there's a lot more to lease. So a lot of people get wrapped up in, oh, this is going to be a whole lot hard. Look, there is a little bit more work, but it's a lot more profitable if you're willing to put on that extra work, because instead of, $23.50 a square foot, if you have one person that took over the whole building, they may have paid you 18. Now, I don't know that for sure, but usually the larger space you take, the better price per square foot you get. So if you're willing to have a little more hands-on management, because now instead of 2 or 3 tenants, maybe you have 10 to 20 tenants, it might be worth it because your profitability is so much higher, because it's just like an apartment complex. A 300 square foot studio is going to lease at a lot higher rate per square foot than a 1,500 square foot 3-bedroom will. There are a lot more that you have to lease to equal the same square footage, but you're leasing at such a higher rate per square foot, it's tremendously more profitable. But it is going to take some extra work. There are some more expenses that will go into that extra work, but you're so much more profitable, you still come out quite a bit further ahead.
That's exactly right. That's it. So yeah, I mean, that's a case study on 4013 Travis Drive, the first office building that I ever did. Since then, we've grown the portfolio to well over 400,000 square feet, which is crazy. In 2 years, I went from a 12,000 square foot building to now over 400,000 square feet. And that's the power of syndication, right? So, Bruce, is there anything else that you want to touch on before we go? I mean, we obviously, if you're listening, if you found this episode and you didn't watch or listen to the other episodes that we've done on syndication, highly recommend that. Bruce and I did a deep dive into the whole process, how to go about that. Just, look up those episodes.
So, we'll just quickly touch on syndication and what it is versus a true partnership, because people will hear this and go, okay, well, you have limited partners. You have a general partner. Well, this is a partnership. No, it's not a partnership, because technically a partnership really means that everybody involved in the deal will have some say in the deal. On a syndication, you're going to have a deal sponsor, the operator of that project, and they're going to basically do all of the work themselves. They are going to make all the day-to-day decisions by themselves without canvassing the entire limited partner base. So they are truly limited or silent partners or passive partners. So in a syndication, typically you'll have one person or one company that runs the whole project for the limited partners. And a partnership, a true partnership within this kind of definition, you're going to have 3 people in, let's say, but everybody will have a say what color toilet that we put in unit 101, right? Well, those can be a little more difficult because now you have 3 people trying to come to a consensus and move forward on decisions. That's a lot harder than a syndication where there's only one basically deciding body that has to make that decision. So that's your big difference there. And then we talked about the GP, have multiple people in a GP. From a diversification, there's more people taking the risk of the loan. But also one other big important piece that a lot of people don't think about. If I have a GP, if I have the managing member company of this project, and there's only one person in it, me, because I can do it. I can sign for all my own loan. I can raise all my own money. I can find my own deal. I only need myself. Okay, that's probably true. You have to think about the health of the business itself. What happens if your personal health fails? What happens if you die? Because that could happen. What if you get to where you don't want to work anymore? What if you get to where you can't work anymore? Or again, if you die? Well, what the hell is going to happen to the project? Because the only person in the managing body of this deal is dead. Well, now what happens? Now the entire project is in a complete tailspin, complete crisis mode. What the hell do we do? We signed onto this to be passive investors. Shit, now the guy that was running is dead. I got to figure something. We got to pull everybody together. Somebody has to be elected, or we have to bring somebody in from the outside. If you have 2, 3, 4 people in your GP, yes, you're going to give away part of the deal. But for the safety of your investors' money, now you have a progression plan. If I die in my deal with Tyler and my wife, well, the other 2 of them can, fill in for me. If my wife and I, heaven forbid, perish in the same plane crash, well, Tyler's still there to run it. So that's another big important part of why you might want to have more than one person in your GP.
Yeah, that's a very morbid way of looking at it, but he's not wrong. I mean, it's true. Like,
it's business. You have to think about that shit.
There's the Silicon Valley, unwritten rules of, you never invest in a company that only has one founder, or, right. It's you want 2 founders or 3 founders. You want a group of people just in case anything ever happens. So it is always good to have a contingency plan. Well, hopefully this episode has shown you guys that office syndication is very much a possibility. It can be incredibly lucrative. Obviously, this is probably not the average office deal, right? I mean, I came in and worked my tail off to make this happen. It was a heavy value add, but if you can find something like that, just know that it's probably worth looking into. And if you have any questions on office syndication, you have any questions on syndication in general, please leave them in the comments. Bruce and I would be happy to get back to you on that. Or feel free to DM us on Instagram. I mean, Bruce and I are very active on that platform, and we always respond. So you can always just jump in. I'm at commercial in Nashville. Bruce is at apartment.guy. It's apt.guy.
Right. Let us know if there's any questions you have for us on an upcoming episode. If there's a topic you want to cover, not just I have this one question, but if you have a topic you would like us to cover, we'll have our own agenda, and that's fine. But if you have something specific you want us to talk about, something you want us to deep dive into, or a specific industry type of expert you would like us to interview, let us know, guys. We will do what you want us to do.
Yeah, that's probably something that we're going to start looking at doing here soon is bringing in interviews. We wanted to wait a little bit and kind of, get used to doing these episodes. But now, I mean, especially after seeing how it went with Austin and having like 3 people in a room, like I thought that went really well. So there's no reason we can't do that. So, well, again, appreciate you guys. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you're listening to us on the podcast, please rate and review so that we can keep bringing this awesome content to you and so that other people can find it whenever they're searching for commercial real estate or multifamily investing advice. And we will see you all next week.
See you guys.